The bacterial genus Bacillus is a common bacterium throughout the soils of the world. These bacteria are chemoheterotrophs. They obtain both their energy and they obtain the carbon for their biomolecules from the molecules of other living things. Often they are decomposers, or at least partially so, but the species Bacillus anthracis is an obligate parasite. It can only obtain its energy and biomolecules from infecting living organisms, and it is the cause of the disease anthrax. Historically, this was important because in 1877, this was the first demonstration that bacteria cause disease. Koch did this by injecting anthrax into animals, and this was the first demonstration that live bacteria could function as a vaccine, as Pasteur did. And so this disease, anthrax, is very common among herbivores. Grazing animals often encounter anthrax, especially if they are grazing low to the ground or eating the plants low to the ground. If they are eating abrasive material, which may produce cuts in their mouth through which the bacteria could enter their bodies, and if they are grazing during hot and dry periods, it seems their resistance is lower at this time and they are more easily infected. When the bacterium enters the body, it produces a number of toxins and also manages to evade the immune systems. It produces a capsule which helps to evade phagocytosis, say by monocytes, and apparently it can limit the mobility of the white blood cells known as neutrophils, which would otherwise be effective in destroying them. And so it evades the immune system and then produces a number of lethal toxins. One is known as the lethal factor, the edema factor, and there are others. Individually, these are harmless, but in conjunction, they cause the hemolysis of red blood cells, they cause edema and swelling, they prevent blood from clotting, they cause cells to burst in necrosis, and ultimately they cause death. So if those who handle farm animals were ever to observe a number of organisms dying, then they should run tests potentially for anthrax, which can have a sudden onset, cause high fevers, cause convulsions, and death of grazing animals such as cattle and sheep. The spores which anthrax can form require oxygen. And so while inside the body of the herbivore, spores are not forming, but once scavengers, say vultures or coyotes, start to open the carcass, now spores can form, and flies may be effective in spreading these spores. These spores are highly resistant and then can resist drying, can resist alcohol, can resist chemical agents, and can last for decades or longer. And so these can accumulate in the soil. And when soil is dug, when there is flooding, this may help to expose spores which have been dormant for long periods of time. Then animals can be exposed to these spores, and then the infectious cycle can begin again. While anthrax rarely affects humans, it can affect humans who handle dead animals or the carcasses of animals. It can affect humans who work with wool or hair of animals, so it can be obtained cutaneously. It can be obtained through undercooked meat. This is a gastrointestinal route, and then can also be obtained by breathing through a pulmonary route, and this was often associated with those who work with wool, and by working with wool they could be exposed to the spores in the air of the factory if it wasn't well ventilated. Unfortunately, some of these features make this a potential candidate for a biological weapon, and 5 countries have actually produced strains of anthrax which are more efficient at being biological weapons. And so, whether it be in warfare or as a form of bioterrorism, where spores may be, say, spread through envelopes in the mail, this is a potential concern for human exposure to anthrax.